Johnny Carson could guide presidents, movie stars, and nervous comedians through late-night television. Animal guests required a different survival kit. A snake claimed the microphone. A baboon handled negotiations with a punch. A rooster delivered a desk incident and forgot the crowing part. Waldo, the water buffalo, turned the stage into a very expensive farm visit. Those are just the tips of the iceberg. Tonight, we're counting down 10 of Carson's funniest, strangest, and most impossible animal moments. 1. The snake that claimed the desk. This is Carson in complete control. A strange little casting story. One perfectly silly question, and the room is already laughing with him. He treats the idea of snakes having agents like it is the most natural scandal in Hollywood. The danger has not arrived yet. Now watch his face as the photographs come out. The joke is still alive, and Carson begins reading the images differently. These are no longer just props for a story. They have weight, size, muscle, and a very clear ability to ruin a calm afternoon on television. Keep your eyes on the microphone. That is where the whole scene changes. Carson can handle a guest, a punchline, a loose story, even a nervous animal. A snake attaching itself to the host's desk creates a very different kind of problem, because now the desk belongs to the animal. That line saves the moment. Carson is clearly uncomfortable. The snake is winning the desk, and the audience knows both things at once. Then he finds the joke. He turns panic into office politics, as though this snake has simply arrived early for its late-night promotion. By the end, Carson has changed the room. He treats the snake like a real guest on the desk, and his questions let Alice make the snake feel safer, cleaner, and strangely welcome. That was Carson's gift. He could lose control for a second, then turn the entire room toward curiosity, laughter, and trust. 2. The baboon with the right hook. This one begins with a taxonomic crisis on late-night television. Carson is not even sure whether his guest is a monkey, an ape, or a tiny publicist for human evolution. Carson starts with the most human problem possible. What do we even call this little guy? Ape? Monkey? Tiny ancestor with camera awareness? He keeps the tone polite because the guest is already moving like he owns the studio. Now the banana becomes the contract dispute. Jim says, "Take it." Carson asks for it, and the monkey responds like a Hollywood star protecting Final Cut. That banana is no longer food. It is leverage. Watch the face here. Carson still thinks he is negotiating. The monkey has moved into a completely different genre. Silent film, property law, and light assault. The recovery is the magic. Carson gets punched in the mouth, reports it like breaking news, then instantly protects the mood. He lets the monkey stay playful, keeps the room laughing, and turns a clean hit into late-night television. 3. The tree-climbing dog who stole the show. Tonight Show had movie stars, legends, politicians, and then Barney Odom arrived with Flatnose, a dog who climbed trees. It sounds like a porch story that somehow found its way onto national television. Carson finds the charm immediately. Barney tells the airplane story with complete sincerity, and Carson gives every odd little detail room to land. No rush, no push. Just a perfect setup for a very unusual guest. Then the name starts making sense. Flatnose is not just a cute label. It is the evidence. This dog has climbed enough pine trees to become a tiny piece of local mythology. Now the legend has to perform under studio lights. Carson becomes the most famous cheerleader in America, gently wheeling Flatnose up that tree like late-night history depends on it. That final line is pure Carson. He treats Flatnose like a guest who earned the room. For a few minutes, a country storyteller and his tree-climbing dog became the warmest act on late-night television. 4. The tiny predator with real claws. Joan Embery brings out a 5-month-old mountain lion, young enough to sit beside the desk and beautiful enough to charm the room. Carson lets the audience enjoy that first impression, then immediately draws the line. This is not a house pet. This is wildlife with claws, muscle, and a very short path to chaos. Joan explains the instinct. Then Carson starts moving the fake prey. The room gets quiet in a different way. Everyone is watching to see how much wildness is still inside this young mountain lion. That reaction is pure Carson. He expected the animal to chase. He did not expect the switch to flip that quickly. The young cat sees movement, locks in, and suddenly, the studio feels smaller. Then, the demonstration goes sideways. Carson drives the prey into the worst possible spot, and the mountain lion turns a hunting lesson into live television confusion. Carson catches it instantly and makes the awkwardness usable. By the end, the jokes give way to respect. Carson looks at the claws and understands the real point. A mountain lion can be young, trained, and calm on camera. It still belongs to the wild. 5. The elephant who fell for Johnny. Betty White brings out Dandy, and the whole room brightens. Carson sees the size, the sweetness, and the risk all at once. This is no ordinary guest. This is a young elephant walking into late-night television like she belongs there. That question is classic Carson. He is smiling, curious, and careful at the same time. He lets the audience feel the wonder of Dandy, while still respecting how powerful she is. Dandy does not follow the script perfectly, and somehow, that makes the moment better. Betty keeps guiding her. Carson keeps playing along, and the whole thing starts to feel less like a trick than a visit. Then, Dandy moves toward Carson, and the room turns soft. It is almost unbelievable. 1 second he is keeping a safe distance, and the next, this huge animal is reaching for him with such gentle, strange affection. By the end, Carson is fully in Dandy's world. He feeds her, laughs with Betty, and lets the elephant set the rhythm. That is the joy of the scene. Everyone follows Dandy, including the king of late night. 6. The puppet bird that took over late night. Rod Hull walks onto the Tonight Show with Emu, his famous puppet bird. At first, it looks harmless enough. A strange, stiff-looking bird tucked under one man's arm. Then, Carson tries to greet it, and within seconds, this puppet turns into one of the most chaotic guests he ever faced. Carson tries to be polite, because that is what Carson does. He smiles, leans in, and attempts an interview. Emu immediately rejects the format, attacks the host, and announces that this conversation will be conducted under bird law. That is Carson's reflex at full speed. Something strange happens. The room freezes for half a second, and he lands the joke before anyone else can organize a reaction. Emu brings the chaos. Carson gives it a caption. By this point, Emu has become less of a guest and more of a workplace incident with feathers. The coffee goes, the desk goes. Carson's dignity takes a small vacation, and somehow he still makes losing look beautifully timed. The perfect ending is that Emu even takes control of the commercial break. Carson asks if they should go to ads, and the bird appears to vote no.
We have to.
For one glorious moment, late-night television belongs to Johnny Carson, Rod Hull, and one deeply unreasonable puppet. 7. The rooster who forgot the assignment. This rooster has been brought onto the Tonight Show for one simple reason: to crow on command. Carson sets it up like a harmless little demonstration, the kind of animal bit that should take care of itself. Then, the rooster delivers a very different kind of performance on Johnny's desk. That is Carson's reflex in perfect shape. The accident happens right in front of him, and he instantly gives it a headline. No panic, no dead air. Just one absurdly elegant description of a rooster making terrible career choices. Now the problem is clear. The rooster has already made an impression, just not the one it was booked for. Donna tries to coax the crowing out of him. Carson tries to stay patient, and the whole room waits for this bird to remember the assignment. The rooster never really performs. Carson does. One desk accident, one stubborn bird, and one perfect line turn the whole mess into the bit. 8. The bat that unlocked Carson's speed. Jim Fowler brings a fruit bat onto the Tonight Show and somehow describes it like upgraded hardware. An industrial strength bat is not a phrase that makes Johnny Carson feel safer. He takes one look at it, and his face immediately starts drafting a resignation letter. Now, Jim wants Carson to actually hold the bat, because apparently looking terrified was not enough participation. The glove comes out. Johnny asks how to hold it, and every inch of his body is quietly voting against this segment. Fowler chooses the worst possible moment to call Johnny cool. The bat starts moving, Carson freezes, and that compliment ages like milk under studio lights. This is not calm. This is a man politely trying to leave his own body. Then, the bat gets loose, and Johnny discovers emergency speed. The host, the chair, and his dignity briefly go in different directions. Somehow, he still lands the perfect line. Even Carson did not know Carson could move that fast. 9. The vulture that made Johnny beg for backup. Jim Fowler brings out a vulture named Lightning, which is a very bold name for a bird that looks like bad news with wings. Carson takes one look at it and says exactly what the whole room is thinking. This is not a handsome guest. Then Jim hands Carson the glove, and the job description changes immediately. Johnny is no longer just hosting the segment. He is being promoted into a landing platform, which is the kind of career move nobody requests on live television. Now, Carson has to trust Jim, trust the bird, and trust his own arm to stay calm. He keeps calling Jim closer, which feels less like animal training and more like a hostage negotiation with feathers. That final line is the perfect Carson exit. He survives one vulture landing, and Jim immediately upgrades the adventure to Africa. Johnny answers like a man who has learned never to trust wildlife plans made on live television. 10. The buffalo ride. Nobody asked for. Jim Fowler brings a full water buffalo named Waldo onto the Tonight Show, because apparently the desk animals were getting too reasonable. Carson takes one look at the size, the horns, and the walking insurance claim in front of him, and you can see the math begin immediately. Carson takes one shot at Waldo's appearance, then wisely corrects himself. That is timing and survival working together. You can roast a guest on late-night television. You just think twice when the guest has horns and outweighs the furniture. Then, Jim suggests Carson should ride the buffalo, which is a sentence no host wants to hear during work hours. Johnny says no with perfect common sense. Unfortunately for him, live television has a long history of turning common sense into a suggestion. This is the whole magic of the moment. Carson climbs on carefully, panics politely, and announces he is under control at the exact moment everyone can see he is not. Waldo brings the danger. Johnny brings the timing. Outro. Carson's animal moments lasted because they never felt rehearsed. A rooster ruined the desk, a bat unlocked emergency speed, a buffalo questioned his life choices, and somehow, Johnny turned every scare into timing. That was the magic of live television. Risk, laughter, and a host quick enough to survive both. If you enjoyed this trip through Carson's wildest guests, like, subscribe, and tell us which moment got you laughing hardest.